Michael Foster didn't think twice. He just threw the car into park, yanked his son's car seat door open, and said, "Stay right here, buddy. Daddy'll be back in 1 minute." Traffic was screaming down the intersection on Westbury and 5th, horns blaring and people yelling. And right in the middle of it sat a broken-down silver coupe with smoke puffing out of the hood. The driver, a woman, was standing beside it, waving her arms and trying to push it off the road. No one was stopping, except Michael. He sprinted across the crosswalk, dodging a delivery van, and shouted, "Put it in neutral." The woman looked up, startled. Her long chestnut hair was whipped by the wind, and her heels were totally wrong for the kind of panic she was in. But she didn't say a word, just jumped back into the car and did what he said. Michael braced himself, placed both hands on the trunk, and pushed. It took everything he had. He could feel his shoulder screaming, but he kept going, muscles burning, until the car rolled out of traffic and onto the curb. The woman jumped out. "Oh my God, are you okay?" He bent over, catching his breath. "Yeah, just old man stamina," she blinked. "You're not old." He looked up. Her eyes were sharp and brown. She was maybe 30, dressed in a sleek navy suit, and looked like she belonged in a glass-walled boardroom, not stranded in rush hour. "Thanks for not letting me get flattened," she added, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "I thought I was going to die out there." Michael cracked a dry smile. "You and me both." She glanced past him and her expression changed. "Wait, is that your car parked with the door open, and is that a kid?" Michael turned around. His 5-year-old son, Grayson, was still strapped in his car seat, watching wide-eyed through the window. "Oh yeah," he said quickly. "I didn't want to leave him, but I couldn't just sit there and watch you get hit." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "You're a dad." "Yeah, single dad." "Grayson's 5, likes dinosaurs, hates broccoli." A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "I'm Whitney Carr," he nodded. "Michael Foster." They shook hands, and for a second, something strange passed between them, something that made her heart give a tiny, stupid flutter. "I'll call a tow," Whitney said, already tapping her phone. "No signal here," he replied, pointing at the brick buildings towering above them. "Dead zone," she groaned. "Of course." "I can give you a ride," he offered. Whitney raised an eyebrow. "With your kid in the back seat," Michael shrugged. "He's the best backseat driver in the city. Charges 1 juice box per ride." She laughed a real, genuine laugh. "That's tempting." A few minutes later, she was in the passenger seat of Michael's beat-up Honda Civic, wedged between a box of Grayson's picture books and a plastic bag of groceries. It smelled faintly of apple juice and exhaustion. "Sorry for the mess," he said as he started driving. "It's fine," Whitney said softly, watching him out of the corner of her eye. His hands on the wheel were rough and calloused. He looked like someone who worked hard, too hard. "What do you do?" she asked. "I'm a mechanic, or was. Garage shut down last month. I pick up odd jobs now. Construction." "Food delivery. Whatever keeps the lights on." Her stomach twisted. "That's tough," he nodded but didn't elaborate. "What about you?" Whitney hesitated. "I work in business." Michael chuckled. "You look like you own the business." She smiled but didn't correct him. He dropped her off at a high rise on the edge of downtown. She stepped out, then turned back. "Hey," she said, meeting his eyes. "Thanks again for everything." Michael gave a small wave. "Anytime." As she walked away, she glanced back. He was still watching her. 2 days later, Whitney was sitting in her corner office, CEO of CarTech, a tech firm valued at almost $500 million, when her assistant popped her head in. "There's a man in the lobby asking for you. Says his name is Michael Foster." Whitney stood so fast her chair nearly fell over. "Send him up." When the elevator doors opened, Michael looked out of place under the crystal chandelier. He held a cardboard box in one hand and looked like he hadn't slept. Grayson was with him, holding a toy T-Rex. "I didn't know where else to go," he said. "Sorry." Whitney stepped forward, heart pounding. "What happened?" My sitter bailed. "I was supposed to start a job today, but I couldn't leave Grayson alone. I thought maybe you knew someone who needed car work. I didn't come to ask for money, just work." Her heart broke a little. "Come in," she said. She let Grayson color on her office floor while she made calls. Within an hour, she'd arranged a part-time position for Michael with the car tech vehicle department, checking and maintaining the company car fleet. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a foot in the door. You didn't have to do this, he said quietly, watching her. Whitney glanced over at him. You pushed my car through traffic for a total stranger. I think this is the least I can do. Michael swallowed. You're not just in business, are you? She smiled. No, I'm the CEO, he blinked. Of car tech. Yeah, a beat of silence passed. Michael exhaled. I backed into a CEO's car with my beat-up Civic. Whitney laughed. You saved a CEO from getting pancaked by a UPS truck. They both smiled. Over the next few weeks, Michael worked hard, always showing up early, Grayson sometimes in tow when his school schedule got tricky. Whitney found herself looking forward to seeing them Grayson's dinosaur facts, Michael's quiet, rugged charm. One evening, after a long meeting, she stepped outside and found Michael waiting by her car. I fixed your coupe, he said. Thought I'd drop it off personally. She looked at the car, then at him. Thanks. I also wanted to say, I owe you. No, you don't. I do, he said. You gave me a chance. I haven't had one of those in a long time. She stepped closer. And you took it. That matters. They stood there, eyes locked, the city buzzing around them. I want to take you to dinner, he said suddenly. Whitney blinked. What? I don't have a lot, but I want to. If that's okay, she hesitated, then smiled. Only if I get to pick the place. Michael grinned. Deal. Neither of them saw Grayson peeking from the backseat with a big grin on his face. Dad was smiling again, and so was she. Whitney sat across from Michael in a dimly lit bistro nestled between a florist and a jazz bar just outside the warehouse district. She had chosen it for its quiet charm and the fact that it wasn't on any influencer's radar. The table was tucked near a window, the candle between them flickering gently as rain began to patter against the glass. Michael looked different in a collared shirt and navy jacket. Still casual, but neater. His hair looked like he'd taken the time to comb it for once, and he kept glancing at the menu like it was written in a foreign language. First time here, she asked, sipping from her wineglass. He nodded, then added, first time anywhere like this, really. Whitney tilted her head. You've never had duck confit. Never had duck, period, he replied. Unless you count a frozen dinner shaped like one, she laughed. You're serious? I don't joke about food, he said. Especially not mysterious French food. Whitney leaned forward. You want me to order for both of us? I trust you, he said simply. She paused. That wasn't a casual thing to say, not when they'd met less than a month ago. But he didn't say it like it was dramatic, just honest. When the waiter came, she ordered confidently. Michael watched her, and once the waiter left, he asked, You always know what you want. Only when it's not about my own life, she answered. In business, I'm decisive, ruthless even, but ask me what I'm doing next weekend and I'll stare at a wall for an hour. Michael raised an eyebrow. So what are you doing next weekend? She leaned back in her chair. You tell me. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to watch the rain slide down the window. I was supposed to take Grayson to the museum. He's obsessed with ancient Egypt lately. Keeps asking me if we have a mummy in the garage. Whitney smiled. Can I come with you too? He shifted, surprised. Seriously, I like museums, she said, and I've never seen a 5-year-old try to explain hieroglyphics. Michael shook his head. He'll probably try to steal the sarcophagus. Even better, she said, grinning. The food arrived, breaking the moment. Michael looked at the plate in front of him like it might bite. Whitney didn't say anything, just watched as he cautiously took a bite and then raised his eyebrows. That's not bad, he admitted. Actually, that's amazing. Told you. They ate in a rhythm that felt easy. Michael didn't try to impress her and Whitney didn't perform. They talked about things that didn't matter and some that did. Like how Michael had once played bass in a garage band before his life became about diapers and debt. Or how Whitney used to sneak into her dad's office as a teenager, pretending to be in charge before anyone took her seriously. When the plates were cleared, Whitney wrapped her coat tighter around her shoulders. The rain had picked up outside, and the city glistened like it had been dipped in silver. Let me drive you home, Michael offered. You sure? You didn't think I was going to let you walk in heels in this weather, did you? She hesitated, then nodded. All right. The drive was slow, the roads slick with rain. Whitney stared out the window, watching the reflections blur together. Michael glanced at her briefly. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? He thought for a beat. Cold, distant, maybe a little arrogant. And instead, You say things like duck can fit and still offer to come look at mummies with my son. Whitney looked over at him. You're not what I expected either. Let me guess, you thought I'd be a mess. I thought you'd be someone who gave up, she said, voice quiet. But you're not. They pulled up to her building, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Michael turned to face her. I don't date, he said. I mean, I haven't. Since my wife passed, it's been just Grayson and me. Whitney's breath caught. How long? 3 years. She didn't say I'm sorry. He didn't look like he needed sympathy. He looked like someone who had learned how to keep going no matter what. I didn't come tonight expecting anything, he said. But I'm glad I did. Whitney reached for the door handle, then looked back at him. Next weekend, museum, I'll bring snacks, he smiled. He'll love that. As she stepped out into the drizzle, Michael waited until she reached the lobby door before pulling away. He didn't notice the man watching from across the street, half hidden under a canopy, his eyes locked on Whitney. Inside the elevator, Whitney leaned against the mirrored wall, heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the rain. She hadn't planned for this. Hadn't expected someone like Michael to walk into her life with a child and a worn jacket, and a quiet kind of strength that made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Upstairs, she kicked off her heels and opened her laptop, distracted as unread emails blinked across the screen. Her phone buzzed beside her and she glanced at the name Tobias Carr. She hesitated, then answered. Hi, Dad. I heard you're seeing someone, came the voice, sharp and amused, and that he parks cars for your fleet. Whitney's stomach coiled. I didn't realize you were keeping tabs on me. I keep tabs on my company and on my daughter. You know how this looks, Whitney. A CEO getting involved with a man who can't even afford a suit, she stood. It looks like none of your business. Don't be foolish, he snapped. You're too valuable to throw everything away for some charity case with a cute kid. I won't let you ruin what we built. Whitney's voice turned cold. You taught me to make my own decisions. This is one of them. She ended the call. For a long time, she stood there, staring at the city below. She didn't know what would come next, but she knew one thing. She wasn't walking away from Michael. Not now. Grayson was halfway through explaining the difference between a pharaoh and a vizier when Michael glanced sideways at Whitney. She was crouched beside his son, her coat tucked beneath her knees, nodding with such genuine interest it made his chest thud unevenly. Apparently, she whispered to Grayson, pharaohs didn't just rule, they were gods in human form. Grayson's eyes widened. So they had superpowers, in a way, she said, but mostly just really fancy tombs. Michael watched them from a few feet away, uncertain which feeling was stronger, gratitude or something far more dangerous. The museum was quiet, but not empty, their Saturday plans falling neatly into place like it had been part of a routine rather than the first time they'd shared a weekend. When Grayson moved on to the next exhibit, Whitney stood and joined Michael near a model of an ancient city. He's incredible, she said, brushing a piece of lint from her sleeve. He keeps me grounded, Michael replied, then hesitated. And terrified. Every time he climbs something taller than him, I lose 10 years off my life. She smiled, then stepped closer. You're a good father. He looked at her carefully. You say that like you've seen enough of me to know. I've seen enough to know the important parts. Michael didn't respond right away. His gaze lingered on her, drawn to the way she didn't flinch from silence. She didn't fill it with empty words like most people did. She stood in it, let it settle. They walked together through the museum's corridors, Grayson occasionally running back to grab Michael's hand or tug on Whitney's sleeve. When they reached the gift shop, the boy made a beeline for a plush sarcophagus that unzipped to reveal a cartoon mummy inside. Michael reached for his wallet. I've got it, Whitney said. Michael turned. You don't have to, I want to, she cut in, already at the register. Besides, it's a business expense. Consider it morale boosting. Michael gave her a look, but she didn't flinch. When Grayson hugged the toy like it was a long-lost friend, Michael said nothing more. Outside, the sun had broken through the clouds, and the three of them walked down the steps together. Whitney paused at the bottom, her expression unreadable. I have to go into the office for a few hours, she said, but I'd like to see you both again. Michael nodded slowly. We'd like that too. Before she turned, she reached into her bag and handed him an envelope, her expression folding into something careful. Don't open it until later. He waited until Grayson was asleep that night, curled up on the couch with his new mummy toy nestled under one arm. Then he opened the envelope. Inside was a printed invitation, high-end, heavy cardstock, the kind you don't just toss on a counter. The company logo embossed in gold at the top. Beneath it, a single sentence: "You're invited to Car Tech's annual charity gala. Formal attire required." Below that, "Guest of Whitney Carr." Michael stared at it like it might catch fire in his hand. The next afternoon, while Grayson was with his neighbor's teenage daughter, his usual babysitter on weekends, Michael stood in front of the one mirror in his apartment, adjusting the sleeves of the charcoal gray suit he'd rented from a place that smelled like dust and starch. He hadn't worn a tie since his wife's funeral, and he hadn't stood this still in years. Whitney met him at the entrance of the Grand Regent Ballroom. She wore a sleek black gown that shimmered slightly under the chandeliers. Her hair was pinned up, exposing the line of her collarbone and the delicate diamond drop earrings that caught the light with every turn of her head. "You clean up," she said, eyes trailing over him, "better than I was prepared for." He gave a low breath. "You look like a CEO," she teased. Like the reason every man in this room just forgot why they came. She tilted her head, the barest hint of color rising in her cheeks. "Come on. I want you to meet someone." She guided him through a sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, every corner of the ballroom dripping in luxury harpists playing near the marble staircase, champagne trays floating past, waiters moving like dancers. Michael kept his shoulders squared, chin up, but he could feel the stares. Not cruel, curious, judging. He didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. Whitney stopped near a tall man with a drink in one hand and a silver pocket square that probably cost more than Michael's entire wardrobe. "Michael, this is Tobias Carr," she said, voice steady. Michael's gut twisted. The man offered a hand with the cool ease of someone used to power. "So you're the mechanic." Michael shook it. Tobias's grip was firm, dismissive. "I hear you've been spending some time with my daughter," Tobias said pleasantly. "Funny, I always thought she preferred ambition." Whitney's hand wrapped around Michael's arm before he could speak. "Dad, don't," Tobias smiled at her. "Just making conversation." Michael held Tobias's gaze. "I'm not embarrassed by who I am. I work hard. I raise my son. That may not impress you, but I don't need it to." Tobias's smile didn't budge. Spoken like someone who's never had something to lose. Whitney stepped forward. "You're out of line." "Am I?" Tobias's voice dropped. "You're a public figure now, Whitney. You walk into galas with a man who can't afford his own suit and people start asking questions. You know the board's already nervous about your leadership. Don't give them a reason to doubt you." Michael's jaw clenched. Whitney's voice was steel. "The only reason they should doubt me is if I stop making them money. And last I checked, Car Tech's profits are up 20% this quarter." Tobias looked at her for a long moment, then turned to Michael. "Enjoy the gala." He walked away without waiting for a response. Michael exhaled. "I probably should have let him say his piece and walked away." Whitney shook her head. "You handled it better than I did." He glanced around the room. "This world of yours, it's not just a different income bracket, it's a different planet." She turned to face him. "I didn't invite you so you could impress anyone. I invited you because I wanted you here, with me." Michael studied her. "You sure you're ready for what that means?" Whitney nodded. "I've been ready longer than I realized." The music shifted into something slow and orchestral. Without a word, she reached for his hand and led him to the dance floor. They moved together in a rhythm neither had learned but somehow knew. She rested her hand on his shoulder, and he held her waist with a reverence most men forgot how to feel. The world around them didn't disappear, but it faded. Just enough. Michael leaned in. "You know your father's going to come after me." Whitney met his gaze. Let him. And for the first time in years, Michael believed that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. Whitney stepped into the boardroom, heels silent against the marble floor. Every seat was filled executives, lawyers, and Tobias at the head of the table. The quarterly review had just ended, but she hadn't come to talk about numbers. "I've called an emergency vote," she said evenly, placing a folder on the table. "Effective immediately, I'm bringing forward a proposal to restructure our external partnerships. That includes our vendor selection process and community outreach contracts. Tobias narrowed his eyes. You don't have authority to call a vote unilaterally. I do now, she replied, sliding a signed amendment across the table. I acquired the remaining shares from our silent partner yesterday. I own controlling interest in car tech. The room fell into stunned silence. Tobias's jaw tightened. You went behind my back. You went behind mine the moment you sent someone to follow Michael and Grayson last week. Gasps rippled down the line of executives. One man dropped his pen. Whitney didn't blink. You thought I wouldn't find out. That I'd let you keep digging into his past, trying to find something that would scare me off. Tobias stood, his voice low. He's a liability. No, she said, voice steady. He's a man who didn't ask for anything, who showed up when no one else did. Who raised a son alone and never once complained. That's not a liability, that's integrity. Tobias's eyes glittered with fury. You're throwing away your future for him. Whitney leaned forward, palms flat on the table. I'm building a future you can't control. She turned to the board. This company was founded on innovation, but we've stopped evolving. From now on, Car Tech will reinvest 5% of quarterly profits into small business partnerships, prioritizing tradespeople and independent contractors. People like Michael. People who deserve a chance to build something. No one spoke. Then the youngest board member, a woman in a tailored suit with a steel pen tucked behind her ear, nodded once. I second the motion. One by one, hands raised, Tobias sat down slowly, his expression unreadable. Whitney gathered her folder and walked out without another word. By the time she reached the street, the wind had picked up. She pulled her coat tighter and checked her watch. She had exactly 20 minutes to make it to the garage. Michael was under the hood of a hybrid SUV when she arrived. His hands were stained with grease and his sleeves rolled up past his elbows. There was a streak of oil on his cheekbone, but he looked up as soon as she stepped inside. I thought you had meetings all afternoon, he said, wiping his hands. They ended early, he nodded, but his eyes searched her face. Something happened. I made a decision, she said, stepping closer, and I need to know if you're still willing to be with someone who doesn't hide anymore. Not who I am, not what I have, and definitely not how I feel. Michael set the rag down slowly. You're asking if I can handle being with a woman who walks into a boardroom and tells her father to back off. Whitney didn't answer. He reached for her hand, oil and all. I've been ready since the moment you let Grayson explain how mummies work. She gave a breath of a laugh. I took a risk today. So did I, he said. I turned down a full-time offer this morning. It was from a dealership. Good money, good benefits. But it wasn't where I wanted to be. Her brow creased. Why didn't you take it? Because I want to build something of my own, and if I'm going to do that, I need to believe in it, the way I believe in you. She swallowed hard. What are you saying? I want to start my own shop. I've got the tools, I've got the skills, I didn't have the confidence. Until now. Whitney stepped even closer, her pulse racing. And if you fail, I've failed before, he said, but I've never had someone in my corner like you. He pulled a small, folded paper from his back pocket. Grayson drew this, said it was our garage. Me, him, and you. He even gave you a cape. She looked down at the crayon, drawing 3 stick figures, one with a triangle dress and a red cape, standing in front of a building labeled Foster Auto. Her throat tightened. He sees us as a team. He sees you as family. For a long time, Whitney didn't move, then she reached into her bag and handed him a key, not to her apartment, not to her office. To the shop down the block from your building, she said. It's been vacant for months. I bought it this morning. You can call it whatever you want. Michael stared at the key. You're serious. I don't make halfway decisions, she said. Not anymore. He looked up, eyes full of something fierce and unguarded. You just gave me the thing I've wanted since I was 15. No, she said, stepping into his arms. You earned it. I just saw it. Their kiss wasn't hesitant. It wasn't polished. It was raw and full and real, the kind of kiss that tasted like commitment, like promise, like finally. That night, Michael brought her home to Grayson's bedtime routine. They brushed teeth together, all 3 of them crowded in the tiny bathroom. Grayson wore pajamas covered in sharks and held his mummy plush in one hand. Is Whitney staying? He asked, blinking sleepily. She knelt by his bed. If it's okay with you, he nodded. You should, you're part of the garage now. Michael chuckled softly. That's high praise. After Grayson drifted off, Whitney stepped into the living room. Michael joined her by the window. "You scared?" he asked. "Yes," she admitted, "but not of us." "Just of how fast I fell." He took her hand. "Sometimes the right things don't take time, they just take showing up." Outside, the city moved on, but inside that small apartment, everything had changed, not with fanfare, not with grand speeches, but with presence. With love earned through sweat, sacrifice, and salvation in the form of a broken-down car on a rainy street, Whitney leaned her head on Michael's shoulder. "You still think this world isn't yours?" He kissed the side of her head. "It is now." And neither of them ever looked back. The bell above the door jingled as Whitney stepped into the newly finished garage, the scent of fresh paint mingling with engine oil and new beginnings. The space had transformed walls painted a deep slate gray, tool cabinets gleaming against the light, and the Foster Auto sign installed above the entrance, the letters carved in smooth steel. Michael stood near the lift, a wrench in one hand, talking to a local supplier about a parts delivery. He wore a fitted gray shirt that clung to his shoulders, and his hair was damp from working in the heat. He glanced up, his expression shifting immediately when he saw her. "You're early," he said, walking over. "I was curious," she said. "Wanted to see what the place looked like with your name on the wall." "You helped make that name mean something," he said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Tobias hasn't tried anything else, has he?" "He's been quiet," she said. "The board's on my side now." "He knows better than to push again." Michael nodded, but his brows drew together. "I've been thinking about him, about the things he said, not because I believe them, but because I know the world still might." Whitney walked to the workbench and set down a small box. "That's why we build something better, not just for us, but for everyone watching." She opened the box slowly. Inside was a custom bronze plaque engraved with the words, "Built for second chances, built to last." He read it, then looked at her. "You seriously want to put that up?" "I do," she said. "Because you're not just fixing cars anymore. You're building something people can believe in, and I want the world to know where it started." He reached for her hand, his grip warm and certain. "You never stop surprising me." "That's the plan," she said, her tone lighter. Now did Grayson finish his science project? "He's at the neighbor's for another hour. They're helping him glue paper volcanoes together," he said. "He tried to use real baking soda. It didn't go well." Whitney laughed and leaned into his touch. "I picked up dinner. Chinese from that place near the river." Michael tilted his head. "The one with the dumplings that ruin all other dumplings." "That's the one." He pulled her closer. "I'll close up early." "You sure you can?" she asked. "I'm the boss now, remember?" They locked up together after he finished with the last customer. The sun was dipping low behind the buildings, casting gold across the pavement as they walked hand in hand to her car. The neighborhood was quieter now, the hum of traffic distant. Whitney drove while Michael rested his arm along the back of her seat, his fingers lightly brushing her shoulder. At her apartment, the table was already set. Dim lights softened the space, and music played low in the background, something bluesy and calm. Whitney moved through the kitchen, plating food while Michael poured 2 glasses of wine. "This doesn't feel like real life," he said. "It is," she said. "That's the best part." They ate on the couch, cross-legged, trading bites and laughing when she dropped a dumpling on the floor, and Michael called it a tragic loss to humanity. After dinner, they sat close, her head against his chest, his fingers drawing slow circles on her back. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, "about what's next." She lifted her head. "For the garage, for us," he said. "I've had this idea stuck in my head for weeks. I wasn't sure if it was too fast, but I can't shake it." Whitney's heart skipped. "Tell me anyway." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, no fanfare, no spotlight, just him and her and the quiet certainty between them. "I don't have a speech. I just know that every day with you feels like something I never thought I'd get again. And I don't want to wait longer than I have to." Her breath caught as he opened the box. Inside was a ring simple, elegant, and unmistakably hers. "I want to build a life with you," he said. "One that's messy and full of glue explosions and late nights and second chances." "Will you marry me?" Whitney didn't hesitate. "Yes." He let out a breath, pulling her into a kiss that was soft and deep and full of everything they hadn't said. Later, they sat on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights flicker below. "You think Grayson's going to approve?" she asked. "He told me yesterday that you're already his favorite grown-up," Michael said, "so I think we're good." She turned her face toward his chest, smiling against the fabric. "Then let's tell him tomorrow." They stayed like that, the night folding around them, peaceful and steady. Several months later, the garage was thriving. Customers from across the city came to Foster Auto not just for repairs, but for the community Michael had built. He had hired 2 apprentices, both from trade programs Whitney had helped fund through Car Tech's new outreach initiative. Grayson's drawings lined the back wall of the office, updated weekly, each one now featuring 3 stick figures instead of 2. One Saturday afternoon, the shop closed early. Rows of folding chairs were arranged in front of the bay doors, draped in navy and white fabric. Strings of lights twinkled above them, and a small arch of wildflowers stood at the end of the aisle. Whitney stepped out of the office in a soft ivory dress that hugged her perfectly, her hair swept back with delicate pearl pins. Michael waited for her under the arch, Grayson standing beside him in a miniature matching suit, bouncing slightly with excitement. When she reached them, Grayson tugged her sleeve. "Can I say it now?" Whitney nodded. "Go ahead." Grayson turned to the guests. "I now pronounce them awesome." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Michael pulled her close, kissing her with a joy that lit up the entire block. They danced under the stars, barefoot by the end of the night, cake smeared on Michael's cheek. Grayson passed out on a bench with a party hat still on his head. Whitney leaned into her husband's arms, eyes soft, voice quiet. "We made it." Michael kissed her temple. "No. We started it." And they did. A life built not from perfection, but from persistence and love and the kind of trust you can only earn by showing up every single day. They never looked back. Not once.